What if the fight that no one believed could ever happen is actually happening? Imagine a 135-pound world champion standing across from a 200-pound YouTuber turned boxer, both ready to trade punches under the bright lights. This isn't a fantasy, it's real. And the boxing world is torn apart. Jake Paul vs. Gervonta Davis, an exhibition bout announced for November in Atlanta, has stunned fans, critics, and even veteran trainers. But behind the posters and the trash talk lies a story that could either elevate boxing entertainment or damage its credibility forever. It all began with a single tweet that shook the boxing world to its core. Jake Paul, the YouTuber turned prizefighter, posted a fight poster declaring his intentions in the most provocative way possible. First, I am going to kill David, then I will go on to slaughter Goliath. The so-called David was none other than Gervonta Davis, the undefeated knockout artist at lightweight. The Goliath, of course, was Britain's former heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua. In that single post, Paul had framed himself as the biblical warrior, ready to topple both a smaller technical genius and a much larger colossus. And with the announcement that he and Gervonta Davis would clash in November at Atlanta's State Farm Arena, the spectacle was set. But there was a catch. This was not to be a professional contest. It would be an exhibition, with rules still shrouded in mystery, and fans, critics, and even trainers began to wonder what exactly they were about to witness. After all, when was the last time a 200-pound cruiserweight stood across the ring from a 135-pound lightweight under the bright lights of a sold-out arena? The news spread like wildfire. On one hand, the fight promised to be a blockbuster, the collision of two of boxing's most polarizing stars. On the other hand, purists immediately dismissed it as a sideshow. The fact that no official rules had been disclosed only fueled the speculation. Would it be 6 rounds? 8 rounds? Would headgear be involved? Would the weight difference be neutralized somehow, or would Paul truly outweigh Davis by nearly 70 pounds? Into this storm stepped Davis's own trainers, Barry Hunter and Braylon Boog Williams, men who had seen the chaos of boxing up close for decades. When pressed about the matchup, they did not lash out or condemn. Instead, they reached back into history, reminding fans that the sport has always had room for spectacles. Hunter recalled a moment etched in time: Muhammad Ali, at the height of his fame, stepping into a Tokyo ring in 1976 against Japanese pro wrestler Antonio Inoki. It was not a title fight. It was not meant to crown a champion. It was, quite simply, entertainment. And just like Ali's strange clash with Inoki, the upcoming Paul vs. Davis exhibition, Hunter argued, should be seen for what it is: an event designed to capture imagination, not rewrite legacies. That perspective was both refreshing and controversial. Hunter's words carried weight. He had seen great champions take part in exhibitions without their reputations being diminished. He reminded the audience that Ali's greatness was not tarnished by Inoki, nor were Floyd Mayweather's credentials questioned when he boxed Conor McGregor, Tenshin Nasukawa, or even Jake Paul's brother Logan in non-sanctioned bouts. What mattered, Hunter said, was the spectacle, the entertainment value, the ability to make people talk. It was entertainment. It was an exhibition. The crowd seemed to get a kick out of it, he said with a shrug. And that was all. To him, Jake Paul was simply playing a role boxing had seen many times before, the showman who knew how to draw a crowd. But as the debate raged, another voice entered the fray. Braylon Williams, Davis's sharp-eyed coach, acknowledged the entertainment factor but insisted the fight would still have substance. Fans might scoff, but he pointed out that Davis had long sparred with bigger men in the gym. He knew how to navigate size disadvantages, and his speed, timing, and ring intelligence would prevent the fight from turning into a slugfest. It's going to be a good exhibition, Williams said calmly, before adding, but it won't be like what you saw with Tyson and Jake Paul. By Tyson, he meant Mike Tyson, who at over 50 years old had stepped back into the ring for an exhibition with Paul that left many fans scratching their heads. Tyson, old and heavy, had lumbered through his rounds. Davis, however, was in his prime, sharp and relentless, capable of neutralizing bigger opponents with guile rather than brute force. Reporters pressed further. What if Jake Paul tried to use his size, to bully Tank, to test the limits of the rules? Would Davis risk standing toe-to-toe with a man nearly 70 pounds heavier? Williams dismissed the idea. Davis, he explained, was too smart to trade blow for blow with a cruiserweight. He would dance, jab, slip, and counter. He would show the audience why he was one of boxing's pound-for-pound stars. I don't think Tank's going to just stand there, Williams said. He's going to use his ring generalship. The fight, in his eyes, would not be a bloodbath. It would be a showcase. Still, not everyone bought into this narrative. Away from the Davis camp, harsh criticism emerged. Boxing insider Rick Glazer unleashed a scathing analysis, drawing comparisons to Floyd Mayweather. He reminded fans that Mayweather only entered the exhibition circuit after carving out one of the most decorated careers in history, 5-division world champion, 50-0, a Hall of Fame resume. Gervonta Davis, by contrast, was still in his prime, still with unfinished business in his own division. Critics accused him of chasing spectacle money rather than fighting the best. Where was the rematch with Lamont Roach Jr.? Where was the long-awaited unification with Shakur Stevenson? What about Floyd Schofield Jr., the hungry contender knocking on the door? To them, Davis stepping into an exhibition with Jake Paul was a betrayal, a detour away from greatness. Meanwhile, Jake Paul basked in the spotlight. He framed the fight as his next great challenge, taunting Davis with biblical metaphors and teasing Anthony Joshua as the final boss awaiting him. His fans roared in approval, while his critics rolled their eyes. On social media, debates exploded. Some argued that Paul was bringing much-needed attention and fresh audiences to boxing. Others claimed he was making a mockery of the sport, diluting its traditions with sideshow theatrics. Memes of Ali vs. Inoki resurfaced, alongside comparisons to celebrity fights of the past. The internet, as always, found its entertainment, regardless of how seriously the fight was taken. But beneath the noise, real questions lingered. What rules would govern the fight? Would there be a weight cap, or would Davis truly step into the ring dwarfed by his opponent? Would it be 3 rounds, 6 rounds, or more? Would judges score it, or would it be pure exhibition with no winner declared? The uncertainty itself became part of the drama, keeping fans hooked as November approached. And perhaps that was the point all along. The lack of clarity only heightened the mystery, making people wonder what they might see when the lights went down in Atlanta. For Gervonta Davis, the fight was a double-edged sword. On one side, it promised massive paydays, mainstream attention, and a chance to show off his skills to a global audience far beyond the boxing hardcore. On the other, it risked criticism that he was neglecting his duty to the sport, avoiding dangerous fights in favor of easy money. For Jake Paul, it was another chance to extend his narrative, to position himself as the outlaw entertainer who dared to call out anyone, from lightweights to heavyweights, from Davis to Joshua. His critics might call it delusion, but his supporters saw it as bravado, the kind of showmanship that keeps boxing alive in the public imagination. As November looms, one truth is clear: this fight will not be remembered for titles, belts, or rankings. It will be remembered for its spectacle, for its ability to capture attention in a sport that often struggles to break into the mainstream. Just as Ali vs. Inoki is still discussed nearly 50 years later, Jake Paul vs. Gervonta Davis may one day be recalled as one of those strange, unforgettable moments when boxing blurred the line between sport and entertainment. Whether fans cheer or jeer, they will watch. And in the business of boxing, that is often the only thing that matters. So as the story reaches its final act, the stakes are not about wins and losses but about legacies and perceptions. Will Davis be forgiven for detouring into exhibition territory if he returns to unify his division? Will Jake Paul finally prove that he belongs in the same conversation as real fighters, or will he forever be the outsider knocking at the door of legitimacy? And perhaps the biggest question of all, after the dust settles in Atlanta, will either man dare to pursue the other names floating in the shadows, Shakur Stevenson for Tank, or Anthony Joshua for Paul? The answers remain uncertain, but the drama is undeniable. So here we are, staring at a fight that feels more like a movie script than a chapter in boxing history. Whether Jake Paul shocks the world again or Gervonta Davis proves size doesn't matter, one truth remains: the sport has changed. The lines between spectacle and legacy are now blurred. And the question every fan is asking, after the lights dim in Atlanta, will Tank Davis return to the fights that define champions, or will boxing keep drifting into the world of show business? Tell me what you think, because this, my friends, could be the fight that rewrites the rules.